everybody, and thank you for joining us for the first ever episode of Bored with Each Other Bite Size. What is Bored with Each Other Bite Size, I hear you ask? Bored with Each Other Bite Size is a new spin-off podcast from our main monthly content that we produce, where we will be looking at much smaller games and expansions that don't really necessitate the deep dive reviews that we put out every month. But as ever, we are a podcast that reviews games, looking at them from how they play at two players, so the two-player perspective. So that still will come into how we talk about games in these. But they're likely to be a lot shorter, and we are not going to be going into our full scoring criteria with them. We're just going to talk about the games, and we're going to give them an overall score at the end of how we feel about them, for those of you that like scores. I know I do. But these are likely to be much sort of shorter and snappier and free and easy than the
long-form content.
Than the long-form content. So this is obviously the first one, so we'll see how we go. If you are coming to us through this for the first time, there is a wealth of episodes out there on the sort of meatier topics and bigger games that go into a lot more detail. But we hope you enjoy. So, as ever, I am joined by my co-host and player 2, Hannah Kelly.
Hi, guys.
And today we are going to be talking about the trick-taking game Fox in the Forest. So Fox in the Forest is a trick-taking game, as I've just mentioned. If you're not familiar with the concept, basically you have cards of various suits. In Fox in the Forest there are 3 suits, and you have cards numbered 1 to 11 for each of those suits. And a trick-taking game basically works of a leader playing a card and then other players playing a card that follows the suit, and the one with the higher number wins the trick. Fox in the Forest has a number of twists on that format. The most important one is to win the game you need to accumulate 21 victory points. You accumulate victory points depending on how many tricks you've won at the end of a round. So whenever you win a trick in Fox in the Forest, you take both cards and you place it down in front of you so everybody knows how many tricks have been won. With Fox in the Forest, there's a concept around being too greedy or too humble, where if you don't win enough tricks or win too many tricks, you basically get 0 points and your opponent gets 6. So there's a huge push and pull mechanic with trying to make sure that you are winning or losing just enough. The other twist in the mechanics is that every odd numbered card does something when it is played. So for example, 3s allow you to change the trump suit for that round, replacing it with a card from your hand. 5s allow you to draw a new card and put one from your hand back under the very small deck of cards. It's the only way you can get more cards during a round, basically. And 1s allow you to lead the next trick even if you lose the current one. So that's just some examples. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Very, very simple, very easy to pick up, very easy to learn. But there's a lot of tactical depth in the detail, which I am sure we'll get into.
I think it's probably worth noting that we're talking about playing Fox in the Forest Duet, which is...
No, we're not.
Are we not?
No, Fox in the Forest Duet is a cooperative version of Fox in the Forest. We are playing Fox in the Forest vanilla.
I mean, I'm looking at the box and it doesn't say Duet on it, so I mean, that probably should be...
There's a clue.
There's a clue there.
Yeah. No, we haven't played Fox in the Forest Duet. That is a cooperative version of this, for 2 players. It's worth mentioning that Fox in the Forest is a 2-player only game. It is a duel.
How long do games take? They're quite quick.
Yeah, I would say probably about 20 minutes.
Yeah, for you to get to your 21 victory points.
Yeah.
You have to play like a few hands in order to get to your 21 victory points.
Yeah, full few rounds. I mean, it is variable. If you're having a run where you're both sort of winning 1 or 2 victory points per round, it could potentially go on for quite a while, but I don't think we've really found that happen. But the propensity for it to go on to sort of 40 minutes is there.
Just.
Depending. But yeah, it's a quick game to play. It doesn't take up a lot of room. One of the classic could play this on an airplane table, pretty much. But yeah, what are your general thoughts, or what were your first thoughts on Fox in the Forest?
So, I have in my lifetime played an awful lot of Uno, and I've also played an awful lot of a game called Shithead, which is something we used to play in college, and this really strikes me as a kind of combination of both of those.
Yeah, I think Shithead is one of those games I think everybody kind of universally plays, and every
slightly different
regional
rules.
area has slightly different rules, a different name for it. And
yeah.
I know growing up in South Africa it was called Crazy Eights.
Yeah, that's more polite version.
Yeah, it's a more polite version. Maybe that's just the kid version. But yeah, there's a million variants of this card you play with the standard, this game, should I say, you play with the standard 52 deck of cards, isn't there? And there are elements of it.
Yeah, and so I think it's kind of encapsulated all of those things. So when I kind of got my teeth into it, absolutely really enjoyed it. A lot of it sort of harkened back to my youth. And I would have to say it probably is definitely my game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just full disclosure, Hannah's way better at this than I am.
I think what I really like about it is it's really fluid and really quick and really easy.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of staggered or not a lot of thinking time to it, and it's just a really nice social opener kind of game.
Yeah, it's a lovely game to sort of get the mental juices flowing, isn't it?
And sometimes when we don't know what to play, we'll crack this out because we can play it in sort of 20 minutes, half an hour.
But it gets your brain going.
It gets your brain going a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it takes seconds to set up. You know, you get the cards, shuffle them, deal. You know, that's it. But yeah, I think what I really, really like about this is it's a classic, easy but deep game. I find there is an awful lot going on in terms of where you can go when you're playing it. For me anyway, I find there's actually quite a lot of tactical choice to make.
So you start with 13 cards in your hand, which is an awful lot of cards to have, really.
It's a big opening hand.
Yeah, it's a really big opening hand, which means I think sometimes you don't really necessarily know where to start. And actually, you can just get away with chucking down a card and seeing where it goes. You quite like to tease people out on that first go.
Yeah.
I am perhaps less fussed about doing that. But I think because of that, it means that you can change your game plan and gameplay quite easily depending on how the other person reacts.
Yeah, you look at the flow of the round almost.
Yeah, and I think that's where this game is so much fun. I really like that concept of flow and ebb and having to see how someone's reacting, kind of keeping a constant track of how many cards you have left, how tight your hand is versus how many tricks you've won. Yeah. And it becomes this really... You have to become quite socially astute, I think.
Yeah, there's a real element of almost bluffing. It's not bluffing, but it's almost like you've got to try and tell what the other person's heading towards doing or what they're thinking. And it can be really challenging sometimes. You think somebody's heading for trying to make you greedy, that's probably my favourite mechanic of the game, is trying to make the other person win too many times. I really enjoy that. And when you pull it off, it's really satisfying. And I think when I've taught this to other people, to new people, you could almost do that to them the first time because they don't see it coming. You tell them the rules, but they still don't expect you to consciously lose so much
intentionally to be able to give it away.
And there's that really interesting ebb and flow of the lead, and the one cards of being able to lose but still retain the lead of what gets put down,
which can be really powerful when you've got very few cards left. And actually, you know, you're having to play trump suits, for example, in order to be able to win rounds. That becomes really powerful, but it's also a really lovely way to, I think, just steal back control when actually you've gone on a bit of a losing streak and
you are losing control a bit.
Yeah, and you're losing control a little bit.
The other person
so having those little mechanics in there, along with being able to change the trump card as well, it's a really sort of fun addition, I think, to the rules.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the trump suit thing gets really important later on in the game because obviously
towards the end of your hand.
Towards the end of your hand, because obviously there's only 3 suits of cards, and when you can't follow suit, you can play a different card, but you can then start using that trump card mechanic because if your card is in the trump suit, and you can play it, you start winning hands unexpectedly. So if you can engineer that happening, you can usually have sort of quite a powerful run towards the end of the hand.
And I think while you've got quite a element of social deduction, that's not kind of the phrase I want to use, but that social element of trying to interpret how someone else is playing and think about what they're doing, there's not a huge amount of table talk unless you want to engineer it that way.
No, there's not. But it is also one of those games that if you're quite chill about it, you can be chatting while you play.
Yeah.
I don't think we're that chill about it. I think I'm concentrating quite hard because I want to try and beat the final boss, which is you at this.
So, again, I think if we're talking about like a first date game, or sort of early on in a relationship, I think it's really lovely because again, you can have a little bit of banter if that's what you want to chat.
Yeah.
But it's also not forced, and if you want to sit there and just play your cards, that's also completely cool.
And it is quite a relaxed thing. So if you're sitting, you go somewhere and you have coffee and you're having a chat and you want a bit of a break, you could sort of crack this out and have a bit of a game of it. Not necessarily a date. I'm just talking about it'd be a bit weird to do that on a first date. That's how you know she's the one. But if you are, a couple and you want to break things up a little bit with, a game while you're sitting somewhere nice, it fits in your pocket kind of thing. It's fun.
We often talk about artwork, and what I'll say is, there's a deck of cards. You can't really get all that excited about it.
No.
But there is some quite cutesy artwork on it. You've got foxes and moons and keys and stuff. And it's kind of cute. It's cutesy.
It's pretty looking. It does exactly what it needs to do. Yeah, And there's not much in the package. You've got 33 cards and you've got some cardboard tokens for your victory points.
On that note, how much does it cost?
It goes from anywhere between 10 and 15, depending on the tides, the shipping forecast, the time of year.
That's interesting because I would have probably pitched it at around a tenner, probably not much more than that.
I think you'd be hard pressed to find any published board game these days.
I'm just tight-fisted.
For under £10. Yeah, you
don't
get
I'm just
them.
being tight-fisted.
And I've seen I've seen smaller packages go for more, like Love Letter, for example, just because they can.
Okay,
people
fair
pay
enough.
That.
I'm just out of touch with board game prices, then, fair enough.
If you're looking at sort of core value of what you get in the box, you're going to have a shorter shrift the lighter, smaller game you get. The more you go down on that spectrum, they all seem to sit at around that point.
All right, fair enough.
And I assume a lot of that has to do just with the cost of print runs. There's obviously a base cost that comes with producing a box, producing artwork, what have you. That's not going to scale so badly with larger things.
Okay.
So I think while it's I'm not going to say a high price point, it's a relatively cheap price point. I will say that I can't ever see myself getting rid of this or selling it.
No,
it's too fun, too easy, too enjoyable.
Yeah.
Takes up no room on the shelf. Why would I not have this kind of thing now that I've got it?
And it's so easy and quick to teach as well.
Yeah.
So that's another big massive bonus. But I agree. I don't think I would ever sell this or trade it in.
I think on the flip side of that, we always talk about, would this work better with more, etc. And it's a two-player game, so it's
moot point.
It's a moot point. However, it's one of those games that would be great if it did incorporate more, because it's one of those games that's so easy to teach. And I imagine if there was some more and I'm sure there are more multiplayer versions of trick-taking games. You think about the crew and stuff like that. It's one of those things that, actually, if more people could play this, they'd probably have fun too. I know it's a moot point because it's just two players, but I'm surprised they haven't come up with some sort of, more player variant that you could incorporate. So okay. With all of that, how would you score Fox in the Forest? What overall score for...
So if we're just going for one score, Hannah's random scoring today, I'm going to score it a 7.
A 7, okay.
A solid 7. I think it's a really good game. I think it's excellent. It is a two-player game, so
it's good at two players.
It's good at two players. Don't try and play it with more. And I think it's a solid game that deserves to sit on any shelf, really, to be honest.
Yeah, I would actually give it an 8. I think out of the small box games that I've played, I think the only one I prefer is Love Letter, and you can't play that really well with two. So this does fit a very specific niche for me. Yeah. I'm sure I'll find others, but off the small box games I've played, this is probably my favourite.
Is it?
Two players, yeah, I would say so. I'm not counting Radlands as a small box game. Okay, I prefer Radlands as a single box, small deck of cards kind of thing. But aside from that, this is probably my favourite.
Maybe it's just because I don't have an opponent that challenges me.
Yeah, possibly, yeah. I try my best, I'll train. One day I'll do a follow-up podcast when I actually beat her, ladies and gentlemen. Don't hold your breath. Right, so that is basically it. Nice, short, sharp, snappy, which is what we intend to do with these. They might get a bit longer depending on the game that we talk about. I know some expansions we might go a bit deeper on, because we'll loop back to a larger game as part of that. But
if you like this new format, let us know. We've got all our socials up.
Yeah, as always.
If you think it's rubbish, also let us know.
Yeah, also let us know. We won't bother them. Hopefully it tides you over, when you're desperately waiting for content on a monthly basis and there's something else for for you there. So thank you very, very much for joining us. And until next time, be good to each other, have fun, and play lots of board games.